Good morning, Dr. Silberman. How's the knee?
The real question is, what are those?
Did you just have a brain fart?
I know Taekwondo.
Stop eating my sesame cake!
You're killing me, Smalls.
Fuck with me, and we'll see who shits on the sidewalk.
Come quietly, or there will be trouble.
Clearly, I wasn't talking to you, big titties. You cherub-looking motherfucker.
People keep asking if I'm back, and I haven't really had an answer. But now, yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
Forever. 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 Forever.
I wanted to talk about Game of Thrones.
Okay.
And I wanted to talk about it for a specific reason. There are 3 hosts of this show, and only one of us has seen each and every episode and each and every season of Game of Thrones.
Which one of these things is not like the other?
Like the other, right. And I think we know who has seen the show and who hasn't seen the show. Dwight has seen the show. He's a fan of the show. He's a fan of, the whole universe.
Dracarys.
Yes. Adrian and I have not seen an episode, and I've seen bits and pieces. I probably have seen collectively 40 minutes of Game of Thrones.
Wow. Wow.
But the reason I wanted to talk about it is because the show ended with its 8th season.
Yeah.
And I guess it started in 2011 and went almost 10 years, 2000 to 2019.
Wow,
yeah.
It went for that long. Wow.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's why I'm surprised you guys didn't see it in that time. That's just it blows my mind.
Well, I don't fuck with no fantasy shit, so I mean that's just.
There you go.
Come on, man. You and Billy Idol, man. Flesh for fantasy.
No, I mean it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
But the reason why I thought it would be interesting to discuss with us having our knowledge and our connection to the material be so lopsided is the fact that it has been like a cultural meteorite
phenomenon, sir.
That has, it has just the ripples out, and its impact is just completely undeniable. I had a phone conversation with D, and I was telling him that it's the only thing you can really compare it to ultimately is Star Wars.
Yeah.
To a lesser degree, like Harry Potter, and to an even lesser degree, maybe even The Walking Dead, in the sense that, it has transcended generations, old people, young people, middle-aged people of the show, people of all races, socioeconomic backgrounds. It doesn't matter. And people have became completely invested in those characters and what they were doing. And me, Adrian, I can't speak for you. Me, I've never watched an entire episode, and yet I know characters' names.
Mm-hmm.
I know titles of like the big episodes, the Red Wedding,
right.
Mm-hmm.
and there's some episode about the bastards.
Mm-hmm. Damn.
Yeah.
The something bastard or something. Yeah. What is it, D?
I'm looking it up.
Well, don't look it up. Don't look
like
it
the
up.
Battle of the Bastards, something along those lines, Joe.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I know some of the actresses and the actors' names.
Mm-hmm.
I know situations. I know I know that Peter Dinklage is related to not Jon Snow, but Ned, right?
Right. No.
Yeah. No, who's his brother?
His brother is the dragon killer, Jamie Lannister.
Jamie Lannister. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I know so much about this show. I've seen the memes. I enjoy the memes. I enjoy the gifs. I enjoy the hell out of the fan art.
Right.
The fan fiction, all of it, and yet I've not watched the show. And the thing that got me was the most of it I've ever watched is about the last 20 minutes of what is the long night or the miserable night or whatever it is.
The long night. Yeah, the miserable night.
Yeah. I watched about the last 20 minutes of that, and I was into it. I was like, damn.
It's addicting.
I mean, I felt the stakes, and I felt, the intensity of it, having never watched anything. And and D, you correct me if I'm wrong, that battle was sold, that clash with the Night King was sold all the way back to the first season, and I think the first episode. Weren't they talking about the Night King all the way back at the beginning?
Well, no. He appears in the very first episode. Yeah, but as kind of like a cliff note, as a cliffhanger. But yeah, what's been happening the entire time for the Game of Thrones aficionados and those that aren't so much, and those that fall between like myself, is the winter's been coming. Winter's been coming since the first season, from the first episode. And the Night's Watch is basically they're the guardians of Westeros, which is the planet they're on, which is like Old England. They've been predicting this. It's been foretold for years and for generations this is coming. And now it's coming down to the line where this is actually a thing which is coming very, very soon. And nobody knows the signs. But there are characters which develop in this 10th season arc, which become very much a part of the change that is winter coming and what happens after that. So this whole thing is about the Stark family, about their survival inside of Westeros, and how they're probably one of the least deceptive families in all the entire Westeros.
The Seven Kingdoms.
The Seven Kingdoms. Yeah, they're.
See, I know what the Seven Kingdoms are, yo.
See?
I ain't had to watch a damn thing.
It's true.
It's just amazing to me that something like this, because D and I, again, we talked about this. You couldn't have predicted something like this. I mean, you couldn't have planned it. Nobody would have planned it. And the thing, it's like, this is a show that's just bursting at the seams with rape, incest, murder, genocide, child torture,
mutilation.
Mutilation. It's just all of this stuff, and I'm like, how has this become? And I guess it's just the way that it's been woven between the original source material from George R.R. Martin to Benioff and Weiss, and how they have adapted, his stories and his tales and his characters, and just made them sing in a very different way for this medium. And I want to ask you, D. I want to start by asking you, D. And I'm not trying to. I want Adrian to chime in too, but I want you to talk just for a minute about the fact that I'm sure they have altered and changed things from the books. And I don't know if you read the book. Did you read the books?
I've not read the book, sir.
Okay, you didn't read
because
the books.
The books are tomes. They're humongous. They're like James Clavell's Shogun size books. Sir. so in between creating my own stuff and casual read of comics, I don't have time to read that much source material.
Okay, well, my question was just going to be, or the request was just going to be for you to talk about how, they probably have changed things to adapt it for TV. But Adrian, what is your relationship, no matter how, transient or what is your relationship to this show in terms of your being, a person who's a fan of pop culture and TV and a nerd, yourself, but you don't really like it. You don't fuck with it either.
Bro, I've never, ever seen an episode, not 1 minute, not 1 second of that show, and it's not necessarily because I dislike that genre, but I'm kind of like yourself. I don't really get down with fantasy a lot, at least in that type of sense. But other than that, it's just, I see the memes and I see everything, and I kind of halfway know some of the characters, but where I come in is more or less just the phenomenon of it. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Just really being apart from it and seeing like, wow, people have glommed on to this thing like it's nothing else. Like, just, man, it seemed like everyone watches it. Everyone.
Right. Well, the reason that is because it's not about fantasy. See, therein lies the truth of it. See, it's about human beings doing human things in human circumstances for human reasons. So what it boils down to is you have a whole Anglican setup where there's feuding houses and deceptive monarchs and intermarrying of kings and queens for position, and you have races which are dominant and suppressed. You have races which are trying to survive and are taking off their land because of mistakes that their forefathers made. You have children which are trying to survive in this hostile environment that are finding their parents being taken away from them in various different directions. You have siblings which are being forced to go out on their own and do things. So it's very human. So the fantasy is just the icing on the cake. In fact, to that point, I don't recall any fantastical scenes except for the Night King's eyes glowing blue for about the first 4 episodes.
Well,
Everything
no,
else.
I mean, well, come on, you got dragons.
That's what I was gonna say.
You got Arya stabbing him with a knife, and he just breaks into 1,000 pieces like the damn T-1000.
Now listen. See? Okay. All right. Dang. Okay.
Go ahead, man.
But here's the thing. That's the pop culture side of things. That's what it's being sold as to people that are not really watching the entire show. They don't show dragons for almost 2 seasons. Dragons will come into like season 3.
Okay, but they're there, right?
Right, they're there now, but they weren't there in the beginning.
Okay, what about in the long miserable night when they were fighting what essentially a bunch of zombies, yo? Come on.
Right.
That's fantasy.
Right, it is. But my point is that the story itself is attachment to people in pop culture. They're finding it not because of the fantastical side of things.
Right.
They're finding it because of the human qualities that are invested in these characters and these people.
No. I don't mean to interrupt you. You're exactly right. It's just like The Walking Dead. When I tell people it's not really about zombies, it's about survival.
Right.
It's a survivalist story. They could be in the Old West fighting the Black Plague, or it could be airborne HIV. It doesn't matter what it is. It's the fact that they're having to scratching and surviving. Like Jefferson's theme.
Exactly. Yeah, the white wall is Cabrini Green, sir.
There you go.
Got tore down like it too.
South Side.
That's it.
Well, I mean, even the cosplay, just all of it. I have really enjoyed all of it. Even like the whole final season where the fans really took complete and utterly ridiculous ownership over this show to the point where they were like, okay, this is some bullshit. We're going to create a petition. We want you all to remake the whole last season and make it good. And here's how you should make it good. And I'm just like, wow. Even though that has happened before, there was actually a hard copy petition circulated back in the 80s when they cast Michael Keaton as Batman. I don't know if you guys ever saw it.
I saw your post.
I did see it. Yeah.
But
and I recall that being a thing, like a serious thing, and I almost to the point, I was almost in agreement with him, because I looked at everything Michael Keaton had done to that point, not realizing that comedy, the other side of comedy is horror, but I think that my I didn't see him as being a real effective person as far as that role goes in the beginning before I even saw in the movie. My supposition was, he's got to be bad because all he does is do comedy and funny shit. And I was wrong. He carried it better through than most of the other Batmans after him, I think, up to that point in the 90s.
Go ahead, eh?
Well, I was going to interject on that point, Swizz, in terms of talking about the phenomena of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, just kind of like, the social aspect of this show. Now, I did see the headlines and everything about, fans being in the uproar and a tiff and a tizzy about this final season and the petitions and all of that. Mm-hmm. And part of me, again, being on the outside looking in, I'm like, as popular as the show is and the following it has and everything, it's not a democracy. Mm-hmm. If you don't like the show, then if you don't like how the show went, tough tits. Sorry.
Turn it off.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That's what they wrote. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? And all of this recent phenomena of, well, I don't like how that went down. Y'all need to do over. Right. Y'all need to redo that.
Right.
Nah.
Well, I think ultimately, I think the schism comes from and the fans and fans of the original source material, George R.R. Martin's, and what was inside Game of Thrones in the HBO series of Benioff and Weiss was that they had gotten it right for so long, it was hand in hand what George R.R. Martin was trying to create inside the books, and they realized when it came down to the final season that they all had was basically. Like a treatment, a treatment for what George R. R. Martin had to say. They really took homage to that because they felt as though it was rushed and it was incomplete, especially when they found out that these guys are going to do Star Wars. So they're putting the kibosh on this because they're like,
man, we got to get up out of here, man.
Right. Because we about
to leave Westeros and head up to Tatooine and Mos Eisley.
Exactly. So so they felt as though they were rushed in completing it because HBO they had said we can go on for another 4 or 5 seasons.
Of course they did because they're whores and they want the money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And D, that brings up the other point I was going to say in regards to that. Did Martin finish the book?
No, still not finished.
He still hadn't finished it.
Okay, and that's my crux right there. It's like you're trying to build a transcontinental railroad across the country, but you have no end in sight.
Right.
It's like you're building a track, but you're still trying to learn how to use a train at the same time, and you're inching up the track.
Let's hope some track up there.
Exactly. So when it does, figuratively go off the rails or whatnot, you shouldn't be surprised because there's no track there. Mm-hmm. And I also have an issue with the source material not being finished. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, in this case, when Martin is writing or whenever he does finish it, who's to say he's going to diverge from his original vision that he had in just his head?
And he won't.
Versus like, I got to make this consistent with what's being written in this adaptation of what I've done.
No, what he said. I'm sorry, to interrupt you. What he said in CBS in 60 Minutes was that, and like a lot of other great writers, a lot of writers we're fans of and comics and things. He's like, well, what I write inside the book is the book. It will always be the book. The movie, the television show doesn't change that. So when he writes the ending of the book, that's what the ending's going to be for the book. I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily coincide with what happened inside the movies at all, television show at all. And that's his right as the author of that.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. You're exactly right, D. That is his right to do it the way he wants. And Adrian, I mean, it's not new that they would want to adapt something into another medium before the source material was finished. That happens all the time with these comic properties that get optioned and get licensed or get picked up to be made into television shows and movies. Sometimes, I'm sure everything Mark Miller does is optioned probably before he's even finished it and submitted it to the publisher. Mm-hmm. I mean, everything. I mean, he's just that, that
he got the golden touch.
He's just that bankable as a comic creator and as a creator of this kind of material. But the thing about it is, to me, is the fact that, it's a dangerous thing for me because if Martin hasn't finished his writing and he's seen what Benioff and Weiss have done with the 8th season, even if he doesn't do what they did, the fact that he may not like what they did, the fact that he may disagree with some of the character interpretations, the fact that he may look at the fan backlash, it can still affect the decisions that he makes now after the fact as a writer. In other words, subconsciously, it could change the course of what he's going to do. He can't not be affected by that. It would have just been better to just have him finish it and say it's done. And then you can always make that claim that writers and creators always make, is that, well, you still have the original comics, so, to hell with the movie, or to hell with the TV show, or to hell with whatever this other thing is that people think doesn't live up to it. You know what I mean?
Right, sure. And I agree 100% with that. My thing is, though, at least he's astute enough to make the claim that that's what his overall onus is, as far as what he's responsible for his side of the game. His side of the game is the Game of Thrones is a series of books. The Song of Ice and Fire is one chapter of that, which is what this entire series has been based on, the Songs of Ice and Fire. Right. And there's more to it than that. So if he wants to continue the story, continue the saga, because it is his stuff, he can do what he wants to do with it, as long as he stays alive. So whether that veers from the TV show or whatever, that doesn't matter. I mean, the TV show was a phenomenon unto itself. The books, arguably, were phenomenal, but because Benioff and Weiss put the fire underneath it and they had a stellar cast. That's another thing too. Let's talk about casting, man. Yeah. My God. They invented some people's careers on this show. Macy Williams was not a name. Kit Harington was not a name. My girl Clark, she was not a name. And now she is, to the point to where in the middle of recording some of those things, in the middle of being Khaleesi, being Daenerys Targaryen, and Tyrion, and Jon Snow, etc. Yeah, they went off and became had other career, had more work because of the success of Game of Thrones. So success, and I think pop culture phenomenon can be a great thrust for the careers of nascent and small actors. Tyrion's already said, not Tyrion, Peter Dinklage has already said that, Game of Thrones will always have a soft spot in his heart, that he'll never be able, that's probably the greatest role of his career, Well, and that's the thing, is like, of everyone there, I think maybe Dinklage was doing stuff and probably had, a career as a character actor before he was on the show. Because I had heard of Peter Dinklage before Game of Thrones, if I'm not mistaken. I think I had. Yeah. But he was in good. Well, go ahead. What were you gonna say? He was in that movie with Will Ferrell, the giant elf that Will Ferrell played.
Oh, Elf.
Wait,
Elf. Yeah, Elf. Okay, Elf. He was in that. Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But I think I had heard of Lena Headey prior to that.
Yeah, she was in...
You have,
yeah. She's awesome.
She was in 300.
Yeah, that's right. She was in 300. Adrian scrunching up fur in his brow.
and she's in the short-lived Sarah Connor Chronicles. John Connor Chronicles for sci-fi.
Sarah Connor Chronicles. Connor Chronicles.
Was it Sarah Connor?
It was Sarah Connor.
Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, there we go.
Short-lived. There you go.
Well, what about is it Natalie Dormer? Is she the one who plays the slave on the show?
Yeah, Milsande. But they see Adrian scrunching his nose up. But actually,
let's get it out here now, D. Let's go ahead and get it out here now, D.
Hold on, Sean.
Hold on now. This is another thing about the cultural impact and the fully embracing of this show by all kinds of peoples that mystifies me. Okay. Now, I watch a lot of stuff. I watch a lot of movies. I watch a lot of television. I've watched a lot of television and movies in my lifetime. And I've read a lot of comics. And most of what I've consumed has been white characters as the leads and as the co-leads. So I'm amazed at a show that, for lack of a better term, is the white people show on HBO. I mean, the two main black characters, Grey Worm and Natalie Dormer's character, aren't they slaves? Or didn't they start out as slaves?
They start out as no. Actually, it's a little deeper than that, Adrian. It's not the kind of.
All right.
It's not the kind of.
Fix it up, D. Fix it up.
All right, yeah, I'll clean that shit up, y'all.
We're talking. First off, we're talking fantasy slaves. So we're not talking about. Let me clarify.
Digging yourself deeper, yo.
Didn't they say that on Fox News? These are fantasy slaves. They're not real slaves.
No.
We're going to pay fantasy reparations.
Let me clarify.
Go ahead, man.
Let me clarify.
Go ahead, man.
So when you're looking at when I say fantasy, it's they're more focused on not racial slavery, but on taking poor peoples and making them slaves. So Grey Worm is from a caste society that was born to be warriors. Natalie's people were born to be slave, not slave hands per se, but in servitude. So in classic servitude, not the kind of slavery which African peoples of face. This is a different kind of slavery. This is more like indentured servitude than slavery. So they weren't getting beaten on a regular basis by their slave masters. They weren't getting parts cut off. Oh my God! They weren't getting parts. They weren't getting parts of the body. Oh my God!
This is not getting any better, yo.
You know, I'm just saying they just weren't. I'm just saying, you brought it up as being a point of interest, and that's not what it is.
Well, but so here's the thing: the main two black characters on the show have they have the humblest position on the show. One of the humblest positions of the above line cast.
Arguably, I think.
They have to be a couple. Like you didn't see Jason Momoa trying to get down with Natalie Dormer. You didn't see Ned Stark trying to get down with Natalie Dormer. It's got to be let the two brown people get down together. Cause
actually, that's not how it went. Because what happened
and don't get me wrong, Natalie Dormer is fine, yo.
It's not. No,
I've seen pictures of her.
She
I
is
agree.
fine.
Natalie Emanuel.
She could get it, but go ahead.
Natalie
Emanuel. Natalie Emanuel. Okay, I'm wrong. See,
but no. But see. Here's the thing. See, first off, Jason Momoa's character belonged to the Horse Clansman. He did get down repeatedly with Khaleesi, the blonde-haired white chick, in the show. Okay.
I've seen the clips.
To the point to where they've actually had a baby, and that child actually led to the conception of the dragon children, which were Khaleesi's dragon children. So she didn't have a natural born baby. She had the dragon children instead. Yeah.
I'm just saying, like savage dragon or something.
No. Add bestiality to the.
They walk around with fear on their head and stuff.
Right. So.
I'm sorry.
Eric Larson coming for them checks, yo.
Right. So.
Go ahead, D.
Go ahead. We sorry, man. I'm sorry.
Make it plain, sir.
The point is that yes, Khaleesi herself. Basically, here's the thing: Emilia Clarke's character, Daenerys Targaryen, as a child that had to leave her family behind. She left her community because she was chased out because her family was all but destroyed. She's one of the last of the two Targaryens, to the best of their known origin.
Isn't Jon Snow a Targaryen?
Well, that comes along down the line, okay.
Yeah.
But right now it's basically her and her brother. Her brother was a bastard. Her brother's the one that sold her to the slave clans with the idea of being able to get her to barter so they can get an army big enough to be able to go back and take on the Lannisters. The Lannisters are the dominant clan. With nobody crosses them. Their army is superior to most other armies out there, arguably, and to cross them is death. Jaime Lannister, one of the Lover brothers, one of the Lannister brothers who actually screws his sister and has a couple bastard children by her, is one, namely Joffrey, is lost track. Anyway, back to as far as the slave clans. Okay, so you had.
Okay, well, without explaining it all, I mean, because you can't give us every detail on it. Just sum it up, yo. Sum it up as best you can.
In summary, they're not slaves because of their race. They're slaves because of their culture and servitude. But when Khaleesi comes along, she says, "Okay,
of course,
I have this vision of a bigger world, and I'd like for you guys to join me in this. Not as slaves, but as partners." So by the time everything is done and through with the Game of Thrones, not only is the soldier who was quote unquote her right hand man emancipated or freed because not because of her death, but because she had made him captain of the guard or whatever, of her guard over all the entire Westeros. He actually strikes off on his own with his people to find another land. So that's not the story of a slave. That's the story of a man who was in a certain situation, who overcame that situation, and then grew into his own.
Okay, so here's the thing. Now that's the other thing. Didn't Natalie Emanuel's character get killed?
She did get killed.
Yeah. Okay. So one half of the two main brown characters on the show got killed. Okay, that's fine. But to take everything that you said, D, and I get all of that. I get all of that.
Yeah.
But I'm still saying it's as a cultural thing. If you pull back from it, the creators of the show, the writers of the show, the producers of the show, the executive producers, everybody said, "Hey, we're going to cast this thing." George R.R. Martin. We're going to cast this thing, and out of 24 main above line characters, I think that's the term they use in film and television. Out of all these characters, 24 people, we're going to cast 2 brown people, and they just happen to be, again, in this precarious situation. They're not the grand ones on the balcony like Cersei, drinking wine and laughing at motherfuckers getting slaughtered. They're not going into battle. They did in the 8th season. They're not going into battle as the leader of the army and the seen as the the once and future king or the prince to one day take the throne. They are the lowers in the society.
No, because Grey Worm has always been seen as an equal, man. Grey Worm has always been like leader of Khaleesi's armies.
Okay.
He's always gone into battle. He's, in fact,
you're saying from the first season he has.
Yeah. He's always been a leader. The horse clans. He's always gone in and not the horse clans. He's always gone in and served Khaleesi well because he believes in the vision. He's seen slavery up by the masters, and he doesn't agree with the slavery by the masters. And his girl, who speaks several languages, Natalie Emanuel's character, has been, oppressed and things like that. And many people have been oppressed by those guys. So he sees an opportunity to make the world right. He doesn't see her as an oppressive character. So and she never has one conversation during the entire time. Like, if you don't do this, I'm gonna do this. So she never threatens him one time. She's threatened other characters. She threatened Peter Dinklage's character several times. You have one more time to betray me and it's over. She's threatened. Here's the beauty of Game of Thrones, man. At any point in time, any character can die in Game of Thrones. That became a cultural phenomenon first. When they took Ned Stark's head, who was the first guy you saw sitting in the Game of Thrones poster,
Sean Bean's character, right?
Sean Bean.
Damn, he dies
Everything.
every movie. Go ahead.
That's a meme too. That's a meme too. That's a meme too. Boromir. He's Boromir in Lord of the Rings, and he Fellowship Ring. He died. So
first to die. Yeah.
So he dies in everything. And I guess that should have been a clue for some people that he was possibly disposable. But the fact this character was titular to the entire storyline, you thought, okay, he would last longer than that. So people were in an uproar about that. And then you knew, all the actors knew at that point, it was on. Anybody at that point in time can die. So they felt like...
Well, yes, but even I, again, as someone who didn't watch the show, you knew that Khaleesi's character wasn't going to die anytime soon. You knew Jon Snow's character wasn't going to die anytime soon.
Well, he did die, then he came back.
Right. Okay, see? You knew that Cersei was not going to die anytime soon. And and then everybody else, it could probably happen. As a matter of fact, I was listening to a podcast, Small Doses, geez, why can't I remember her name?
Because it was Small Dose.
I was listening to Small Doses, and Amanda Seales who's a big fan of the show. She was saying, like, the deaths that occurred during the long night or whatever. She said none of them were really surprising. Like, none of them really. Her opinion. She said none of those were really surprised.
And I disagree.
You thought some of them were?
Yeah, I did.
Which ones?
I thought the one that died next to Khaleesi was a surprise to me because
Bruce Wayne.
No, not Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. No, Bruce Wayne.
That's Bruce Wayne?
He's cast as Bruce Wayne in the New Titans season 2.
Oh, I was like,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So
Well,
I knew he was gonna go.
Based on that, right?
He got something else to do.
Yeah,
He got
I got another job, yo. I booked another gig.
Right. All right. Yeah, exactly. But I didn't think he was gonna go out like that. I mean, I like the fact that he went down because he was probably the one person I think that really loved Daenerys the most. I mean, he was twice her age, but he loved her. Like he went through hell and high water for her. Like
okay.
So I thought, oh damn, if he goes, what the hell's what else is going to happen? I knew Jon Snow was going to die because to me it was to the very end it was going to be like Jon Snow and Daenerys ruling.
Of course.
That's what it should have been.
Of
it should have
course.
been Jon Snow and Daenerys ruling, but that wasn't how the writers saw fit to make it happen.
Well, let me ask you this, D, because and this is I kind of want to get to too, and I want Adrian to chime in on this as well. That a lot of the fan criticism about season 8. While certainly they were rabid and had the taste of blood in their mouths when things weren't going their way,
and other
things, but a large part of the criticism that I heard that I thought was completely valid and fair was to say that I, as a fan of this show and as a consumer of this material and as an audience member, was not satisfied with the way some of these things happen. And not like, oh, everybody all up in arms because in The Last Jedi, Luke went out this way and he should have gone out. Everybody is... There are people who will disavow The Last Jedi simply because Luke didn't go out in a blaze of glory. But on this particular...
Aye, sir. Aye.
Okay. But my thing is this. For people to say this was unsatisfying. Cersei dying under rubble in the bottom of the castle in the basement. That was unsatisfying. For Khaleesi to turn as quickly as she did, and then like the next episode she dies. That was unsatisfying. You know what I'm saying? It was multiple things
right
that they pointed to, and I think it's completely valid for an audience member to say this wasn't satisfying to me. This didn't. You sold me one thing in door number 1, and then by the time we got to door number 3, it was something else. You know what I mean? And I don't think that's unfair. Now the whole redo the season and whatever. And to Dee's point, the reason they feel that way is because D&D, Benioff and Weiss got it right for so many seasons prior to that. And they did such an excellent job and it made the show, endeared the show to so many people over the time, over the 8-9 years or whatever it was.
Right, 8 years roughly.
They were just appalled that, okay, this is where we are. But I think it was a complete valid criticism. What do you guys think?
I mean, from a person who's watched the show, I think it was valid, but I think it was also aggressively self. Like I think the way the fans have taken it upon themselves to try and rewrite something that was written by somebody else is
of course, yeah, that's way over the line. Yeah,
right. I mean, that's just disservice to who they are as people for one thing, and also, I mean, let it be what it's going to be. If you can predict everything inside of a movie, that makes it very, very boring. I think the fact they kept everybody knocked off their feet, and some of the choices they made were aggressive, not the way we would have ended it. It ended the way that kept us interested and engaged the entire time, and that's to their credit. So yeah, Jon Snow kills Khaleesi. He's probably the only one that could have done it. I mean, honestly,
he is the only one that could have done it.
To get that close.
That would have been the only thing that would have been satisfying in terms of Khaleesi dying, and you knew Khaleesi was going to have to die after she torched the whole village.
Right, but she did so with purpose. But I'll get into that a little bit later. But Arya would have been the person for me that might have snuck into her. Because Arya was like a ninja. She was like the man of all faces. She could get into places and be Jon Snow, acting like she was Jon Snow, and get closer to her and kill her. She could do that. That's her ability.
But Arya, from what I understand, her goal was not to kill Khaleesi. Her goal was to kill Cersei.
Right.
Matter of fact, she was trying to get into the castle to kill Cersei when Man Mountain Marco showed up. Yo. So, but Adrian, do you know what I'm talking about? Like, there are times where, of course, you're going to feel like some things get missed or something gets missed. But for me, it's just like, okay, sometimes things are like a total miss where you're like, okay, this seemed weird. And, and even people saying it felt like it was rushed, like, I think Mark Bernardin's assessment, D, and I know you heard it on Fat Man on Batman. I think his assessment was great that there are certain singers in popular music over the last 50 to 60 years, Frank Sinatra and people like that, Whitney Houston, who didn't write songs, but they could take songs and interpret them magnificently. That was their gift. You give me the thing, the content, and I will make it come alive. And maybe that was Benioff and Weiss's gift, was to take these roadmaps and cull them down and put their spin on them and really make them, sing for the medium of television. And when they didn't have a roadmap, when they only had like a napkin where somebody said, get on 285 and get off at 85 South and then go down to Claremont Road and make a right, and then you're going to run into Book Nook. You know what I'm saying?
Right. That's exactly true, actually, but go ahead.
You know what I mean? That's all they had, and it was like, okay, and they got lost along the way, and there were digressions, and there were rabbit trails, but do you see what I'm getting at, Adrian?
Yeah.
I do, and I was thinking of another HBO series that I could try to make an analogy to, and that would be The Wire, and in particular that fifth season. Now that fifth season has some strong points to it, definitely, but there are a couple points where it felt like it did jump the shark.
Right.
Like in terms of like, and these characters wouldn't necessarily do that. These characters wouldn't, act this way. This is so out of what has been established already, And as a fan of that series, up to that point, obviously, it's like, there were points where I was kind of unsatisfied with it, but I didn't feel so strongly that I was like, I need to redo it.
Right?
At some point you just have to say, look, trust the storytellers. If the story doesn't end the way that you think it should end, unfortunately, that's the way it is. You know what I'm saying? Often, like people in real life, characters meet ignoble ends.
They do.
It's not always going to be that's part of the irony, of storytelling too. You have these very grandiose situations, these very, magnificent characters who meet these very low ends. So it's almost like a counterpoint to, the height that character reached, only to be brought down low to this, So in some cases that could work, but I think what fans are looking for is just for everything to end on a high.
Right.
Everything to be, just magnificent.
Right.
And you can't do that always in storytelling.
Yeah.
You have to have those peaks and valleys.
Right. To encapsulate what you're saying in a time capsule that perhaps my generation can relate to, what happened in season 8 basically was Empire for Star Wars, wherein it ended on a low point for our heroes, and you didn't know what was going to happen after that. I think even though they managed to swing it off in the last episode to where a character that had been kind of important the entire time, but maybe not as important as people wanted him to be. But actually, we watched this story, watched him develop the entire time to the person he actually became in the story, and that was to become a king at the end of it.
You talking about Bran?
Bran. We watched how this little boy climbed to the side of a building instantly, as little boys do, and get pushed by two incestuous brothers and sisters to his death. He survived that death, and was paralyzed after that. And his entire time, he was paralyzed the entire time throughout the show. Now, what happens to him during the course of the show? Yeah, of course, what happens during the course of the show? He's chosen by the powers that be of Westeros, the spiritual powers that be of Westeros, to become what's called the Three-Eyed Raven. Right, which is basically like this insightful mystical character, kind of a Doctor Strange, if you will, or even a Professor X, if you will. But he can see into the past, present, and future of Westeros. Right?
Adrian, They got memes of him with his eyes turning white, like he's doing his mental thing. Talking about he over there getting Wi-Fi.
Dang, yo. Well, just a very small digression, D.
Mm-hmm.
If he was paralyzed the whatnot, like, is he like paraplegic and they just kind of sit him?
He's in a chair. He's in a chair. He only do nothing but sit in the chair the whole time.
All he can do is move his arms. No, he does more than that. You know, he talks and stuff. He's very.
He talks,
like Stephen Hawking or something.
He doesn't move around.
He's articulate, right? He can't move around.
So he's like Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, kind of like Stephen Hawking. A little bit like that. Kind of like that. Yeah.
Winter is coming.
You're wrong, yo.
That's terrible.
You're wrong,
That's terrible. Edit that out of the show.
Man, damn, yo. Rest in peace.
R.I.P. to the science god, yo. Shout out to the great brain, yo.
Yeah, man.
But you know what? But I think, and to make another slight digression, I think even a comparison to be made to The Last Jedi, for me, as a Star Wars fan and as someone who has pretty much liked the way that they have reignited the series, you know, with The Force Awakens, with The Last Jedi, for me, I was fine with the way that Luke went out. I think they could have sliced out the whole storyline with Laura Dern's character and had Leia be the one to sacrifice herself in the ship. Yeah. And that would have felt somewhat poetically satisfying for her to meet her demise that way. As far as Luke, I like the fact that Luke was older and smarter and not necessarily like, I'm not finna be swashbuckling with these little young bucks out here, you know, slinging damn lightsabers and throwing spells. He was smart instead of, using, his athleticism. And I mean, he's a 60-something-year-old man. He should be. That's what he should be. He should outsmart the little young guy. Yeah. Right. So anyway, but
I'll say this. I mean, for Luke, and this is based on my love for the overall genre and love for the Star Wars saga period. There are Jedis that are twice his age from other races that have done more as far as tutelage and as far as fighting ability than he did.
In the movies?
Arguably, no. Then
that doesn't matter. That's a different universe, D.
Right, but I'm saying EU universe. But I'm saying that's the level of expectation that comes along with being in Star Wars. People have gone. Here's the thing about George Lucas. He laid out a great plan for execution for Star Wars, right? But he didn't do only so many of those movies inside of a 10 to 15, 20 year span, right? So he left a lot of area to be filled by other people the way they need to fill it to make sure that the story is being told to some sense of completion, right? So
I totally disagree.
Disney, well, you would because you're not a fan like I am. But when Disney took over it, what they should have done, it would have been a simple way of ingratiating yourself with the fans and building an alliance with the people that are going to support this IP by taking some of the EU, the existing universe, and adapting it to, which they're doing now anyway, adapting it to screen format. Because that way you can make sure that things which had gone before, even like since Lucas honestly wasn't a good storyteller. Let's be honest, he wasn't a good storyteller. His strength wasn't in backstory. His strength was in visual execution. That's what Lucas's strength is.
Okay.
And I think that when you look at like the backstory that's been given by other people, take that and utilize that for your own benefit because it's ultimately your stuff anyway, and put that in Lucasfilm and make it a part of Lucasfilm Natural, and then you'll be able to have more fan service. Then people, not fan service. Then fans will be more satisfied with it because they've seen what's happened before, and it'll be a better situation.
I disagree only because and as it relates to Game of Thrones, because as we all know, they're going to launch a follow-up series or whatever.
Well, it's a prequel.
Like 100 year prequel. No, like 1,000. I think 1,000 years before.
Yeah.
Like 1,000 years before prequel. So,
which I'm not interested.
Yeah, but the problem with that is this. You had like a decade of Star Wars, and even when you did the prequels in the 90s, everything is still, that's like 2 decades, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say. It's all based on Skywalkers and Darth Vader and Leia and whose mother. It's all based on that clan. Part of the problem that you're going to see with Star Wars movie, and I don't want this to turn into a Star Wars conversation, but with Star Wars moving forward to try to tell other stories is once you leave behind Luke Skywalker, Leia, Vader, the Imperial, all of the Empire, all of that stuff, you leave all that stuff behind. Now your older fans are going to be like, well, that's not my Star Wars. And there's a chance that the audience gets smaller. That's why they keep coming back to this, man. No, I know you'll like it, but I'm saying the older audience is going to be like, that's not my Star Wars. Just like if they cast Michael B. Jordan as Batman, Bruce Wayne, they're going to be like, that's not my Batman. Like if they make, Thor a woman in the movies, they'd be like, well, that's not my Thor. Chris Hemsworth is my Thor. That's just how people are going to be. And then you take a chance on the IP in that medium getting smaller. And this may be what happens with Game of Thrones when they do this prequel. It'd be like people may not care. Like you said, this was a special cast, a special group of people. You couldn't have planned it. Some of the casting choices were probably last minute as hell. Like, they probably had other people cast as certain characters, and then their schedule didn't work out, and then somebody else filled in. Like Hugh Jackman with Doug Ray Scott playing Wolverine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, at the last minute, Doug Ray Scott couldn't do it, and Hugh Jackman, who had auditioned for it multiple times, just gets sent in like 3 weeks before shooting. Boom, here you are. So I don't know, man. I wonder where this is going to go. And this actually leads me to the other question, or the final question is again, we can kind of compare this somewhat tangentially to like The Sopranos or Harry Potter or The Walking Dead or I'm trying to think of some others, The Wire maybe, to a much lesser degree, because The Wire was never a hit. The Wire was never a big success. But certainly Star Wars, and certainly, to the kind of fandom that we see for something like Star Trek. But, I mean, do you guys...
Lord of the Rings even Lord of the Rings
exactly. Even Lord of the Rings, would certainly fall in that as well. So I just wonder if we're going to see something like that again soon. And I wonder how much of the intensity of Game of Thrones was aided by the fact that people could watch the show, record it, make GIFs and memes, and put them online that night. The next day, people could not sit around at work and around the coffee machine and talk about the latest episode. You could text somebody immediately after the show went off. People would tweet and would post on social media as the show is going on, and I wonder how much all of that as a cultural phenomenon helped to make it the juggernaut that it is. And I just wonder if this is just a special time now, and we may not see that again. I mean, what do you guys think?
I think that to your point, I think the cultural phenomenon comes from part and parcel the cast and characters and the deconstruction, if you will, of the idea and concept of what fantasy is. Most high fantasy has these great long-winded soliloquies about I will do this, that, and the other. I'll take the sword. Blah, 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 blah. It's like I'll cut the fucker's head off, or that cunt, or that asshole, or get that piece of shit out of my face. It's like I'll whoop your ass with it. And the thing is, they were very. That's the thing. They were very crass, and I think we live in a crass society, and I think that ultimately it hit a note with the subjectiveness and the constant idea of who we are as a society right now. So I think it came along at a time when people are dealing with certain things, and it was a point of like there's a character named King Joffrey, and he was an abject asshole.
Wait a minute, isn't that Eddie Murphy's father in Coming to America, King Joffrey?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
He's not worthy of my son.
Right, exactly. This is Joffrey Baratheon Lannister. What do you want to call him? But he not King Joffrey Joffer, but yeah, man, he was a bastard, man, and he was an asshole, and the kind of degree of anger that was languished upon him as a character actually transferred to him as a person when he left the show, and he decided he would quit Hollywood after that. Like, he literally left Hollywood. He does no Hollywood stuff. This is his one and only. This is his final role. Now he's in England. He has his own because he's got that long money from Game of Thrones. he has his own company. He does his own acting company, and he does Shakespearean plays, whatever kind of plays he wants to do. My point is that there won't be another Game of Thrones like this in our lifetime, because it's not one of those things you could plan for. It just happens, and I think people glommed onto it because it was modern. It wasn't Old English speak. It was very, very crude and digestible based on modern sensibilities.
Hey, D, pause for 1 second. I'll make a comparison that you have made in the past, and maybe this is a good one to see or to make. It's like what you were saying about Star Wars, where all of the depictions of the future in science fiction prior to Star Wars was this pristine, sterile environment. 2001. Everything is super clean and super sleek and super modernized and super,
right.
Everything is electronic and whatnot. And the Star Wars future, there were elements of that there, but the Star Wars future was dirty and dilapidated. And yes, it was future tech, but it was future tech that was already 100 years old by the time this story was being told. And maybe that's kind of what you're talking about here with them doing this kind of what would typically be called, I guess, in TV and film is like castle intrigue. Mm-hmm. Who will take the throne? Who will be the leader? And who will be stabbed in the back? And, and all of the dirty dealings behind the scenes. But it's always done with these grand British accents and in these grand statements like you're talking about. But it sounds like you're saying that, some of these motherfuckers were gutter.
Yeah. Yeah. They're like, it's like you see, get away from me, you old cunt. It's just they went for it. They went into all kinds of places. I mean, the taking of and the raping of one of the main characters that lasted almost the very last episode by this horse clansman. That was a rough scene, man. Khaleesi, Momoa's character, and Khaleesi, that was rough. That was there was no love in that.
Yeah.
And but yet it evolved and changed into something that was compassionate and passionate, and she held him in a sense of high esteem, So, things like that don't transcend they transcend into pop culture ideals, but they don't really make for a good classical fantasy. It may have happened, but not in the same way and as graphic. And I think the sensibilities that it had were for a modern audience, which it found and made its way into memes in the pop culture. And they started seeing these things like, did this really happen inside this? And then once they started seeing it for themselves, like, damn, this is happening on a regular basis. And then they're like, did they become fascinated by it? Like, wow, this has a story that's interesting to engaging too. But the sex shit's going on, and that's cool. And this death shit is brutal. And, the way they talk to each other with no regard and disregard, that's something that people can really grasp onto and engage, become engaged
medieval
with.
snapping on them in a medieval.
Yeah. I mean, it was straight gutter, man. It was straight gutter, man. And I think they really were successful with that, and that's part of the success, I think too.
Yeah.
Transcending ages, man. Modernizing Shakespeare. It's not something you could do and maintain a straight face, and that's what these guys did. Modernizing the Bible, for that matter, is something that you simply, it's hard to do, and that's what these guys did, and that's part of the cultural impact we're finding. Everybody likes great stories, man. Whether it's fantasy, science fiction, straight fiction, whatever you have it,
Right.
And when you find characters that you can become attracted to and hold dear and hold in a special place to you, not because you care about them as far as characters goes, just because their dynamics are so interesting when they oppose other characters, that makes for interesting storytelling, and that's engaging, and that's what you found in this situation. Okay. As I step down on my soapbox.
That's all right.
Adrian?
I don't know. To me, it's I'm of and again, obviously having never seen the episodes, but looking at the effect, of this phenomenon on, just in general, just following social media and so forth. It's funny how people are squeamish about, this stuff happening, in actuality or whatnot, but, have no problem seeing it on the show. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're talking about the rapes and all this stuff, this really, crazy stuff going on there. And, people talked about it with, I don't want to say with glee, but just like, wow, I can't believe this happened. And they're like nonplussed by it,
Yeah.
I guess obviously because it's fiction or whatnot, but those are the same people that will turn around and be like, oh man, this is happening for real in the society and everything. So that's one aspect that, I don't know if it will be reconciled, but the other thing too is just how it just took over like modern life. Like seriously, like you could not turn around while Game of Thrones was going on. You cannot turn around and not hear about it. Like, by osmosis, I knew some of the characters. I don't know the storylines. I don't know episode names or anything like that, but I know character names and I know, certain things about
events.
It.
Yeah.
Exactly. When it really hit me was when we went to Spectrum Fantastic Art Live several years ago, and you could not turn around there. I think that was like the second. Yeah, it was the second Spectrum, and there was fan art galore. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
By these incredible artists. And they were doing their versions of these characters. Obviously John Picasso.
Yo. Shout out to John Picasso,
yes, JP. Exactly.
What's up, sir?
And his versions were coming out just as the series was starting to gain steam. Right. So it was very interesting to see, like, he was basing his off of the actual book itself, the source material. Yeah. And then it's side by side with the actual series itself. So that kind of fascinated me, to see that he was, even though he's obviously a fan of the show itself, he was still basing his depictions on the source material. And it was just really cool to see that. And not only just him, but others, do their interpretations as well. And when we went to Spectrum, that's when it kind of started to hit me like, this is a thing.
Right.
Like, this might be going somewhere.
Yeah. Right.
Like, wow, people are into this.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then it just snowballed from there to the point where it's like a part of your life.
No pun
like,
intended.
You go to Starbucks. Yeah, you go to Starbucks and
John Snowball.
Somebody talking about Game of Thrones. Right. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for times like these, man. I'm grateful for times where that fiction with promise becomes a dominant focus of pop culture, especially when it comes to fiction, which has always been kind of on the outskirts of appreciation, amongst pop culture. So I enjoy all the. I mean, when I come to work and two of my associates are talking about, Game of Thrones, that's when I knew it transcended, beyond. You know what I mean? Beyond what I was expecting. It's like, games. Wait, you're watching Game of Thrones? Like, yeah, it's awesome. Have you seen the new Dragon? It's like, wow. Yeah. Where were you when I was, several years ago when this first started? I just started watching it, but I'm catching up to it. Before I know it, this person in particular have surpassed. I mean, they had really dug into the idea of binge watching and watched damn near 6 seasons in a matter of 3 weeks.
Wow.
And that is a commitment. I mean, that is a serious commitment. Yeah. To the point where we're having conversations about it now and had conversations about it. And it's fascinating, man. It's fascinating. And the fact that the characters can be so well written, the source material is so well written that these characters can compel people to want to know more about them. I mean, that's the real testament to me, man, is to write a character which brings people in that aren't used to the source material, they can relate to it. It's incredible,
Yeah.
And that's my overall assessment.